I quickly want to refer ourselves to the letter dated 9th October, and I want to read that this committee had invited all of us here, resulting from the visit that this committee undertook in several police stations and police centers across the country. And one of the pertinent issues that arose during our recent visit is a continued deduction of the housing allowances from police officers' payslips in instances where they no longer benefit from the housing following their transfers. Additionally, the process of reverting this deduction has been cumbersome, often requiring officers to travel to the headquarters as their own expenses to rectify the situation, which at times does not even, it's hard if they don't even succeed. This situation not only affects the morale of the officers, but also highlights challenges within the welfare and the human resource management system of the police service. And in line with above, this committee resolved to invite you for the meeting to be appraised on the following: the status of the police housing and housing allowances in the country, the status of reform on police housing and housing allowances with regard to the affordable housing, budgetary allocation to police housing and housing allowances, challenges encountered in allocation of the housing for the police officers, and any other relevant information regarding the matter under consideration. So we are discussing a very important matter on police welfare. We all know, and even including the IG, remember when you were actually doing the approval hearing, one of the critical issues that Kenyans and these members keep asking is one of the issues was reform and the welfare. And more central and important this matter of police housing. And we took a survey, went across the country, and of course the situation was so worrying. But besides even the unavailability of poor situation of the housing, even those who are provided for, they will raise a lot of issues that whenever they are being transferred, the National Housing Corporation keep deducting from their pay slips. And it became an issue of concern. Whenever they follow it, it takes years for them even actually to have it corrected. So I think we had made it clear that is some of the issues that we want to be highlighted as we address the big issue of the police welfare in the country, which in a bigger way affect their morale. So we are going to start with the Ministry of Housing. I think the whole problem actually or complaint is on your side, on your shoulder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. And I wish to respond to the issues that were raised as follows. Starting with the status of police housing and housing allowances in the country. The State Department of Housing and Urban Development assumed the responsibility of managing all institutional houses under the National Police Service. That's the Kenya Police Service, the DCI, as well as the Administration Police Service, together with the Kenya Prison Service, way back in February 2019, following reforms in the housing for the discipline services that was initiated sometime in December 2018. A total of 33,517 housing units were transferred to our management, broken down as follows. For the Kenya Police Service, we are managing 16,551 units. Administration Police Service, we are managing 7,631 units. And the Kenya Prison Service, we have 9,335 units. These units, as you pointed out, are generally in a dilapidated state due to many years of deferred maintenance, congestion, and shared utilities. Demand significantly exceeds supply, with many officers relying on alternative private accommodation outside their duty stations. As part of the police reforms program initiated in December 2018, free housing for officers living in police lines was replaced with market-based allowances for officers below the rank of inspector, discontinuing free accommodation that was obtaining then. Officers in institutional housing are required to pay rent via the payroll deductions, but however, inconsistencies arise, such as continued deductions after transfers without prompt reversals. This affects officers who no longer occupy government rental housing, leading to financial strain and morale issues, as highlighted in the committee's concerns. To improve habitability and affordability, rental assessments were conducted between February and June 2019. That's about 6 years ago. Establishing fair rent values and comprehensive rent register, which was shared with the respective disciplined services. Utility separation for water and electricity. The assessment indicated that we need a total amount of Kenya shillings 7 billion as follows: 5.5 billion for water separation and 1.5 billion shillings for electricity meter separation across the country to enable individual consumption and billing. Total maintenance budget across the 47 counties is estimated at Kenya shillings 11 billion to bring those houses to a condition which is acceptable and habitable to the officers. 3, the status of reforms on police housing and housing allowances with regard to affordable housing program. Housing reforms for the discipline services focuses on sustainability, accountability, and expansion, which we are doing through the affordable housing program. Key interventions that we put in place include rent and utility reforms. As mentioned earlier, we are updating the rent register to onboard newly completed housing units and first utility meter separation. Already we have paid 78 million shillings to Kenya Power Company for the separation of meters within Nairobi County as part of our phase 1 exercise. Then we have the maintenance prioritization. Due to budget constraints, minor repairs have been completed on 525 units. For example, we have the dog unit in Langata, where we've done 24 units. We have the Chi Company stationed at State House, where we've done 260 units. For financial year 2025-26, which is current, we have a budget of 250 million shillings for refurbishment of government buildings. And we are allocating this for the repairs of a total of 710 units, including the DCI training school, where we are doing some refurbishment to a number of blocks there, comprising 60 units. We're also carrying out refurbishment works at the Ganjo Police Training College, where we have a total of about 180 units. And this is shown in the table below as per my submission. I don't think I need to repeat myself by going through the table. If you allow me, I can proceed. But however, with that one, we have a total of 525 housing units. There's another table. This is broken down into what you have
Chair,
completed.
We don't have the submissions he's referring to.
If there are enough copies, you can circulate to members.
All of us don't have.
Oh, sorry for that. I think. Okay. three has got the document, the file. Sarah? Okay. So I don't think we need to take you back. I'm sure members can catch up. Is it numbered? Yeah, page 2. Page 2. There's a table there, 3.2.1, completed maintenance works. I think that is what he has already handled. Then he was in page 3.
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, if you allow me,
Yeah.
with your permission,
Yeah.
let me just go through that table
Okay.
for members to be able to appreciate what
Okay.
we've done in terms of the completed maintenance
Okay.
works. Okay, we have the dog unit at Langata, where we've done minor repairs and refurbishment, total number 24 units. We have Shaurimoyo AP camp in Nairobi, where we've done repairs and refurbishment for 15 number units. We have the Nyamira AP camp, we have done general maintenance of 24 units. The G company at State House, 260 units. The presidential escort units in Ruiru, we've done minor repairs, including repairs to the sewerage system, comprising 12 blocks. The rec unit in Ruiru, general maintenance, 16 units. The West Park Estate in Nairobi, we've done repairs of 6 housing units. And then,
point of order, Chairman. Mr. Busienya, you are telling us that these projects have been completed. What assurance does the committee have in terms of verifiable evidence, in terms of work that has been done, in terms of even something like certificates? Yeah. Do you have any evidence that these are completed works?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These works were procured competitively. Bids were sent out. We received quotations, which were evaluated and awarded to the bidders who are substantially responsive. And in most of the cases, they were the lowest bidders. They carried out the works which are supervised by our staff, and the necessary certification in terms of the interim payment certificates and the final accounts were prepared together with the final certificate, and the committee that does the inspection and acceptance filled the necessary forms and approved. So we have that documentation, not with us right now, but within our premises for all these works. Thank you, Chair.
For this committee, this is both a matter of national importance and also it is of concern to the people. And public resources have been expended to meet these exigencies. So for that reason, you must share that with us, maybe by next week, Monday, Tuesday, with our secretariat.
Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chair, we may also need to know what criteria you used to select these particular projects. How did you arrive at, for example, Shauri Moyo and not the other one?
Maybe you note to what Balosi addressed, maybe when we come to plenary, maybe you can address at the first question. But what the vice had said, I don't think you need a week. Normally, what Ministry of Housing and Public Works does, even in NGCDF, they normally issue certificate at every stage. And even, they are not even allowed to be paid without certificate of completion. So I'm sure if you've said completed and paid, you don't need a whole week to give us. You're supposed to have come with certificate of completion as a proof that indeed this work was undertaken and completed to satisfaction of the user, which is the police. So you don't need a week. Today is when? Thursday. By Tuesday, you need to submit the supportive document.
Very much obliged.
Yeah,
Mr.
then not
Chairman.
what Balosi Sigei said. When we get to the plenary, to be the first question you address. So maybe you can proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. We are now at I was at number 8, which is the prison senior quarters at Woodley. We did minor refurbishments there for 12 units. Langata Women's Prison, these are the prisons, so I don't know if you want me to elaborate on that, because now today we are dealing with the National Police Service. But however, that's part of the work that we do. Thank you. And then I want to talk about, to take you through the work that we've scheduled for this financial year, which is under table number 3.2.2. The location is at the DCI training school. We intend to take some refurbishment works to some block of flats there comprising 60 units. At the Kiganjo Police Training College, we want to work on about 180 units. The GSU headquarters, we want to carry out repair works involving about 120 units. And then at the Embakasi Administration Police and GSU Training College, Nairobi, we're going to carry out repair works comprising 75 housing units. And the Presidential Escort Unit at State House, Nairobi, we're going to repair about 275 units. And then for various police and prison institutions, we intend to carry out an exercise involving the removal or replacement of the asbestos roofing materials, which, as you all know, is hazardous to public health. However, we don't have sufficient funding, but we are going to carry out a survey in the course of this financial year to establish how many units there are and what will be the cost implication, and then we'll be able to look around for funds to be able to support that very important exercise in the course of this financial year. So the total number of houses to be refurbished is 710 in the course of this financial year. And then there is the element of the integration of the affordable housing program. As we are aware, there's a directive that 20% of the affordable housing program units be reserved for the discipline services. And what we are doing in terms of appraisal is that we have completed and ongoing projects which are intended to deliver 962 units. 462 completed units under the affordable housing program for the discipline services. We have 500 under construction as we speak. And then you have got newly awarded projects, including Kilimani Police Station, where we are putting up 542 units. Completion level is at 10%. And at the GSU headquarters, the contractor was awarded these works a few weeks ago. It comprises 4,319 units, and the completion level is just 1%. There are 4 projects comprising 400 units, which are awarded, but pending commencement because of the window that's normally given in the event of any appeal that may arise before we give orders to commence works. And then we have 13 projects comprising a total of 3,099 units, which are under procurement, totaling 9,142 units, which are in progress, and is broken down in the table, as you can see. I don't need to repeat that. I think I've been able to take you through that, and if you allow me, I wish to now move to the next one. These measures that we have put in place aim to provide modern, affordable housing and transparent housing management, not allowance, to enhance officer welfare. I want to move on now, Chairman, if you allow me, to the...
Ones are 462.
462 are completed.
Yes, under institutional housing program.
Thank you, under institutional housing. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So completed and handed over.
Some have been handed over, and others are in the process of being handed over, but they're already completed and certified as such.
Okay. Maybe the commissioner, you will confirm the same. So just proceed.
Thank you.
And you can account. It's this place.
Yes, we can.
They're all 462.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. We can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and then on the other item on the budgetary allocations to police housing and allowances, we have a program, then you just mentioned, the National Institutional Housing Program, which includes police housing. In this financial year 2025-26, the allocation is Kenya shillings 14.26 billion. The police component from that is broken down as follows. We have 14 ongoing projects, 962 units in total. The allocation we have is 170 million, against a requirement of 340 million required to complete the projects within the current financial year. So we have a shortfall there of about 170. And then at the Kilimani and the GSU headquarters, we have a total of 4,681 units. We have an allocation that we put aside of 443 million against a requirement of 10 billion, 10.9 billion to be expended over the next 2 years to completion. Then we've got awarded and pending commencement. They've been awarded but just pending commencement. We have 400 units and we have an allocation of 21 million against a requirement of 700 million. And then under procurement, we have a total of 3,099 units. We have an allocation of, we've set aside about 60 million against a requirement of Kenya shillings 6.2 billion. That is a requirement that we have to be expended over the next 2 or so years. And then what we've planned for financial year 2025-26, so we have 47 projects with a total of 22,871 units for the Kenya Police Service, rather for the National Police Service. However, we have 100 million allocated against a requirement of 5.517 billion due to budgetary constraints. So additional funding to support utility meter separation that you did indicate or allude to, we require a total of 7 billion, and for maintenance, we require 11 billion to be able to tackle the backlog. Kenya shillings 250 million has been earmarked for maintenance of police houses within the financial year 2025-2026. And then we have the challenges that we've encountered in the allocation and management of housing for police officers. We as a State Department are not involved in the allocation of houses for the police officers or for officers within institutional housing. However, we have encountered challenges because we do interact with them as follows. We have incomplete tenant inventories. Then what we are doing is that we have got ongoing reconciliation of the National Police Service and the Kenya Prison Service to update our records. And this updating, of course, has led to delays in effecting deductions, which eventually result in accumulation of arrears. We also have the challenge of low rent remittance. The expected monthly collection is Kenya shilling 77 million from the entire stock of housing that we have for both institutional housing and for pool housing. But the actual remittance that we get ranges from 26 to 37 million. And with the change or the shift from the IPPD, the integrated personnel and personnel database, to the unified human resource payroll, it caused a drop of about 3,000 officers' deductions were dropped without instructions. I think this was done inadvertently, and we are trying to address this jointly with the respective services. We have a maintenance backlog of, as I mentioned, of 11 billion that we require. However, we do prioritize emergency works that arise from time to time, such as broken down sewerage systems, roofs that have been blown away by high winds, certain electrical installations that are essential, and also internal plumbing and drainage and sanitary facilities within buildings. On the utility meter separation, we require a total of 7 billion, and the State Department of Housing does not have that required amount of money, and therefore we have had discussions with the National Police Service that we do a joint request to Treasury for a special allocation as a project, just to handle that. What we have within our budget, as you saw, is only 250 million. So this is something that I would want to bring to the attention of this honorable committee. On the delayed rent recovery and stoppages, I'm going to talk later on at length regarding that, as you did point out, Mr. Chairman, in your opening remarks. We have the manual system that we have in place which causes inefficiencies. We have, however, deployed an enterprise resource planning system which will assist in the automation of the processes. Allocation of houses is handled by heads of police and prison stations, but delays sometimes occur in remote areas or during transfers that happen from time to time, and this exacerbates the challenges faced in effecting deduction, stoppages, refunds, and clearance of rent arrears. I have some additional information which I think is relevant regarding the matters under consideration under 6. The State Department is committed to automation, as I've mentioned, to be able to enable the tracking of tenants and rent to enhance efficiency. The planned projects for 2025-26 extend to other services like KDF, KWF, KWS, KFS, and NYS, and other tertiary institutions to promote a holistic welfare for all officers. And the government, through the State Department of Housing and Urban Development, has established a mortgage scheme for state and public officers to facilitate the officers to purchase or construct residential houses. This mortgage scheme also benefits members of the disciplined services. In order to enhance efficiency in rent management processes, the State Department has partnered with the eCitizen to create a payment gateway for rent payment and clearance of accumulated rent arrears. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, the State Department of Housing and Urban Development remains committed to cause of providing adequate and sustainable housing solutions to all Kenyans, and will continue to partner with the National Police Service to improve on the housing conditions of police officers' accommodation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Thank you, the Undersecretary. Members, I will prefer that we let all of them first go, then you note your question, so that we take them at once. I don't think it's much of a complicated issue. So I think we may now allow the service or the commission? The service, the NPS, the IG. In this case, you are the complainant, so I don't think.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. Let me start by saying that, number one, we are grateful that this morning we have been invited here so that we can also have an opportunity to clearly illustrate the situation we are in when it comes to matters housing. Honorable Chair and members, I'm accompanied by the DIG responsible for the Kenya Police Service, DIG responsible for the Administration Police Service, and I have Mr. Mohamed Amin, the DCI. This is where majority of the houses are domiciled, and they are actually the real complainants when it comes really to matters housing, because housing enables them to also discharge their operational responsibilities efficiently and effectively. So this is an area that we really feel that a lot needs to be done, and a lot of support is also required so that we can be able to enable our police officers discharge their duties of ensuring that there is safety and security throughout the Republic of Kenya, a duty that we have continued to do under difficult circumstances. And it is for that reason that myself, as the Inspector General, I'm really happy that we can be given an opportunity to let this honorable committee get to understand where we are on matters housing, which is a big part of the welfare for the police officers. Honorable Chair, I'm going to take you through, and then later on, the DIGs will also come in, especially at the plenary, to also put in their inputs. Honorable Chair and members of this committee, the National Police Service remains committed to professionalizing policing services, enhancing accountability, and ensuring that police officers are adequately equipped and trained to safeguard national security. And in this regard, several comprehensive reforms and initiatives have been undertaken as outlined here under. Overview. The National Police Service is mandated to safeguard internal security of the country. To fulfill this mandate, officers are deployed nationwide to maintain law and order and respond to emerging security threats. Owing to the dynamics and often urgent nature of police operations, officers are required to reside within or near their duty stations to ensure prompt response to emergencies and operational demands. Consequently, police housing has historically been located within or adjacent to police stations or police camps. However, over the years, the rapid growth in the number of police officers has far outpaced available institutional housing. This has forced the service to adopt temporary and stopgap measures, including shared units, makeshift housing structures within police stations and camps. While these arrangements have offered short-term relief, they have unfortunately compromised privacy and adversely affected officers' morale and welfare. To address the housing gap, the service previously adopted leasing of residential units from private landlords. Although well-intentioned, this method proved financially unsustainable due to escalating rental expenses, especially in urban settlements. As a result, the government instituted various task forces, including the 2009 National Task Force on Police Reforms, Lansley report, which recommended housing allowances as a long-term measure to enhance welfare and integrate officers within the communities. Following this recommendation, the government rolled out policy framework on provision of decent and affordable housing for police officers, and integration with communities in 2018, and subsequently introduced housing allowances in January 2019 to all officers in accordance to their respective lands, allowing them to source for accommodation within the neighborhoods they served. While this policy marked significant progress, availability of suitable housing within the current housing allowance brackets remains a significant concern in many urban settlements. Consequently, some officers continue to seek institutional housing or reside far from duty stations, thereby affecting operational efficiency and emergency response capabilities of the service. Given the unique and demanding nature of policing, there remains a compelling need to expand institutional housing to ensure officers reside near their duty stations to enhance operational readiness of the service in fulfilling its constitutional mandate. The status of police housing and housing allowances. Status of police housing. Honorable Chair and honorable members, currently the National Police Service has approximately 20,000 institutional housing units across the country against a workforce of about 100,000 police officers. This translates to a deficiency of about 80,000 housing units, meaning that less than half of the officers are accommodated within the existing police housing facilities. Even with shared occupancy, arrangements, only a small proportion of the officers get accommodated in these units, forcing the majority to seek alternative housing, often located several kilometers away from their duty stations. Further, following the implementation of the policy framework on provision of decent and affordable housing for police officers and the integration with the communities, the management of police housing was transferred to the State Department for National Housing and Urban Development, which assumed full responsibility for real estate management, including maintenance and rent collection from the officers residing in police houses as tenants. Regrettably, many of these houses have deteriorated due to inadequate maintenance and delayed renovations, adversely affecting the welfare and living standards of officers who occupy them. The status of housing allowances. Following the recommendations of Maraga Task Force report, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC, issued a revised circular on the payment of housing allowances for police officers. Under this framework, all officers are entitled to housing allowances that are structured according to their respective job groups and deployment locations, which have varying cost of living across different clusters as highlighted below. Cluster A, this is for Nairobi County. Cluster B is for Mombasa, Kisumu County, Nakuru County, Meru County, and Uasin Gishu counties. Cluster C is for all the other counties. So, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, it is clearly illustrated. When you go to Cluster A, for Nairobi, it is as indicated there, starting from Job Group T up to Job Group F for the police constable. That is the amount of money they earn in terms of housing allowance. And when you go to Cluster B again, it is as illustrated there. And Cluster C, for all the other counties, is as illustrated there. Affordable housing program. His Excellency the President directed that approximately 20% of the housing units under the government affordable housing program be reserved for discipline services, thereby facilitating their access to decent and affordable home ownership opportunities. Following this directive, the service continues to encourage officers to take advantage of the government's affordable housing program to provide long-term housing security for their families. At the same time, recognizing the operational need for proximity to duty stations, the government has commenced construction of institutional housing blocks nationwide. For example, Kilimani Police Station has been allocated 542 units, currently at around 40% of completion, with several other sites at different stages of development, procurement, and even construction. C, the budgetary allocation to police housing and allowances. Following the implementation of the policy framework on provision of decent and affordable housing for police officers and integration with the communities in 2019, which introduced housing allowances for the officers, the responsibility for managing police housing, including utilities, repairs, maintenance, was transferred to the State Department for National Housing and Urban Development. This transition was intended to enable the National Police Service to focus more effectively on its core mandate of national security. As such, National Police Service no longer gets budgetary allocation for maintenance or refurbishment of police housing units. For the financial year 2025-2026, the current year, the National Police Service has an allocation of 15 million 124,458 for housing allowances to the officers. Additionally, a total of 20,895,260 has been approved for capital projects related to police housing, as shown here below. Number one, we have an approved budget of around 13.5 million. That is for erection and completion of a block of flats at Ugonja police station. And number two, we have an allocated 7,340,260 for completion of police houses at Kamukuji, Pagani, and Central police stations. These houses have been actually, for many years, been lying idle without being completed, and hence being a big challenge to our officers. Challenges in occupation of institutional housing. Given the limited number of institutional housing units available, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, the service acknowledges the significant pressure these places on housing demands across all lands. Allocation of the existing houses is therefore conducted based on availability, and once an allocation is made, the details are communicated to the Principal Secretary, State Department of Housing, for approval and subsequent implementation by the NPS. All rent deductions for the officers residing in institutional houses are processed through the payroll system and remitted direct to the State Department of Housing to facilitate the maintenance and administration of the units. Despite the policy shift aimed at enhancing efficiency and improving officer welfare, which led to the transfer of housing management responsibilities to the State Department for National Housing and Urban Development, I continue to receive numerous complaints from affected officers, many of whom travel long distances to seek assistance. This includes, number one, delays in rent adjustments, slow processing of rent stoppages, deductions, and refunds, foreign officers transfers due to prolonged reconciliation, and the communications between the State Department for Housing and the service. Poor housing conditions. Many units have deteriorated due to inadequate and irregular maintenance. 3, health risks. The continued presence of asbestos roofing poses serious health concerns for the officers and their families. And a good number of these houses are roofed with asbestos. High utility costs. Unseparated water and electricity meters have led to inflated and accumulated utility bills, inconveniencing both the officers and the service. There is also the billing disputes. Shared meters continue to cause persistent disputes and financial strain on the service, despite ongoing engagements with the State Department for Housing and the Kenya Power and Lighting Company to find a lasting solution to these challenges. Finally, any other relevant information regarding the matter under consideration. Number one is the welfare management. The welfare of officers is central to morale, productivity, and integrity within the National Police Service. Well-supported officers are better positioned to serve the public professionally. The key welfare interventions includes, number one, medical and health support. The National Police Service ensures officers and their dependents assess quality health care through the police medical insurance scheme. The mental health programs, trauma, counseling, and wellness initiatives are prioritized for officers exposed to high-stress operations. A comprehensive medical cover contract with the Kenya Police Service runs from 1st April 2025 to 31st March 2026, administered by a consortium led by APA Insurance Kenya Limited, with Britam Insurance overseeing life cover. MAKL manages job groups A to K, while Minet manages job group L to T. Britam oversees staff last expense, group life assurance waiver, and group personal accident schemes. Medical infrastructure. Level 4 hostels at Bagathi and Kanyonyo enhance in-house service delivery, particularly for officers with disabilities and specialized medical needs. Psychological and emotional awareness. Counseling and rehabilitation programs support officers affected by stress, trauma, and substance dependency. Housing and accommodation. A structured housing policy ensures decent, adequate, and secure accommodation. The ongoing housing modernization program targets officers in remote or hardship areas, supplementing allowances that may not fully match market rates. Welfare associations, circles. This support for police circles and cooperative society facilitate access to affordable credit, savings, and investment opportunities for the police officers, which also plays a critical role towards their welfare. Transfers and deployment. Efficient and fair personnel deployment enhances effectiveness and officer satisfaction, and the key measures includes transparent transfer policy. Procedures, timelines, and criteria are clearly outlined to avoid bias. Equity and rotation. Regular rotations balance experience, prevent overstaying, and ensure equitable skills distribution. Some delays exist due to staff shortages. We have cases of where some officers have overstayed in some duty stations for some time. Majority of these issues are affected by the number of officers, the shortages actually of staffs. Consideration for welfare factors. Family circumstances, medical conditions, and spousal employment are considered where possible. Semi-automation of records. Adoption of an information management system, IMS, enhances efficiency, tracking, and transparency. These are some of the key areas that we are also improving on so that we can be able to get timely information to deal with the management of these officers. Promotions. Officers with disabilities undergo special physical interviews at all regional information headquarters to ensure equity. Promotions rely on performance appraisals, training, integrity, and leadership potential with standardized evaluation tools and competent panels ensuring transparency. Gender and disability considerations are incorporated to enhance inclusivity. Promotion cycles are predictable and the results are communicated with the feedback mechanisms in place. Honorable Chair and honorable members, that's the information that I would wish to table before this committee for consideration. I submit, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, IG. And as we had agreed earlier with members, we are going to allow the Commission also do their presentation. I'm sure in a big extent, of course, in supporting the position of the IG. Then we are going to go to plenary.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The Commission, like you have said, supports the position and the submission from the IG. And this is our submission in response to the 5 issues that were contained in the invitation letter. First of all, on the status of police housing and house allowances in the country, in line with Article 43, 1B of the Constitution of Kenya, which provides every person has the right to accessible and adequate housing and to reasonable standards of sanitation, the NPSC formulated a housing policy on housing for the National Police Service in 2018. The objective of the policy was or has been to ensure a well-coordinated and structured provision of housing within the National Police Service, to establish uniform standards of police housing across the service, provide clear and consistent procedures for housing allocation, and set parameters for effective management, maintenance, and sustainability of police housing. The policy seeks also to guarantee that all officers are adequately housed, either through payment of house allowances that reflect prevailing market rental rates, or through the provision of institutional housing units and related amenities. Accordingly, all officers are entitled to house allowance based on prevailing rental market rates. These allowances are graduated by rank and standardized across each rank. Additionally, the police officers are entitled to the provision of standard houses within the area of their duty station. Where institutional houses are not available, officers are allowed to rent accommodation within their jurisdiction using their housing allowance. The policy further designates the responsibility of identifying housing zones and approving rented houses for provision to officers to the Inspector General through the Housing Directorate of the service. Officers residing in government-provided institutional housing pay commensurate rent and cover their own utilities and service costs. The government of Kenya, through the State Department of Housing and Urban Development, we have already had their submission, is responsible for the construction of the institutional housing units, particularly to accommodate officers deployed in operational and hardship areas where access to private housing is limited. Now, to the status of reforms on police housing and housing allowances with regards to affordable housing. The report of the National Task Force on Improvement of Terms and Conditions of Service and other reforms of the members of the NPS, the Kenya Prisons, and NYS assessed the adequacy of the existing housing policy for members of the National Police Service and established that our policy provides an elaborate framework for construction, allocation, and maintenance of police housing. The task force further observed that the IG is mandated to operationalize the Directorate of Housing, responsible for monitoring, managing, and maintaining police houses across the country. In its final report, the task force made several key recommendations aimed at reforming and strengthening the housing framework for police officers, including the expansion of institutional housing, the retention of housing allowances, the devolution of housing functions, the consideration for the development of a dedicated mortgage scheme to the National Police Service in liaison with the National Treasury, offering affordable financing at concessional rate of 2% per annum to enable junior officers in particular to access and own homes. Then integration into the affordable housing scheme, we've already had a submission from the representative from the Ministry of Housing. Vacation of and demolition of dilapidated housing, vacation and demolition of old and dilapidated housing structures currently occupied by police officers to pave way for redevelopment and improved accommodation. Now, in line with the National Housing Policy, the National Police Service Commission has ensured that all police officers receive a house allowance. Further, in exercise of its mandate under Section 10 of the NPSC Act, which empowers the Commission to formulate and periodically review HR policies for members of the service, the Commission remains committed to regularly review housing allowances in consultation with the SRC to ensure they align with prevailing market conditions and rental trends. These reforms aligned with the government affordable housing agenda under the Better initiative, which seeks to guarantee access to dignified and affordable housing for all Kenyans, including members of the disciplined forces. Budgetary allocations for police housing and housing allowances. I think most of the issues raised by the IG and the ministry have covered this, but our submission is that to fully implement the housing policy and sustain ongoing housing reforms, there remains a significant funding gap that must be addressed through increased and predictable budgetary allocations. The bridging this gap will facilitate regular review and adjustment of allowances to reflect market rental trends, investment in maintenance and expansion of institutional housing through both exchequer and public-private partnerships, acceleration of the integration of police officers in the affordable housing program. We've seen that this is already happening. And then the Commission underscores that adequate and sustained funding for police housing is a critical pillar of officer welfare, operational efficiency, and morale. It also directly contributes to the realization of the right to accessible and adequate housing under Article 43(1)(b) of the Constitution, and supports the broader agenda of better. Now, challenges encountered in the allocation of housing for police officers. And now, despite the existence of a comprehensive housing policy for members of the NPS, the effective allocation and provision of housing for police officers continues to face a number of systemic and operational challenges, including the inadequate budgetary allocation, aging and congested institutional housing, market rate mismatches, unequal access to housing in remote areas, inadequate housing within proximity to police stations, like we've heard from IG. It, of course, translates in inefficiencies. And fifth, any other relevant information regarding the matter under consideration, the Commission underscores the importance of allocating resources where responsibility and mandate are domiciled to ensure efficiency and accountability in alignment with the constitutional and statutory functions. There is also need to establish a clear framework for execution, coordination, and reporting of welfare-related matters such as housing through appropriate legislative instruments. In this regard, the following initiatives currently underway at the Commission. First, the development of a comprehensive police welfare and benefits framework. Of course, the ongoing periodic review of house allowances in liaison with the SRC and Treasury. And then ring fencing of welfare funds. The Commission proposing that funds assigned for welfare programs should be ring fenced. That includes the housing allowances and funding for development of the housing infrastructure in the police. Legislative and policy alignment. There is need to provide a comprehensive legal framework within the relevant statutes to guide implementation, reporting, and oversight of welfare-related interventions, including housing, to ensure alignment with the Commission's constitutional mandate. And in conclusion, the Commission, of course, recognizes that adequate and dignified housing is fundamental to welfare, morale, and operational efficiency of police officers, and we reaffirm commitment to working collaboratively with the department, of Parliament and National Treasury, the Ministry of Lands, Public Works and Housing, and of course the IG to improve the overall welfare of police officers. We welcome the committee's continued support in providing oversight to ensure transparent, accountable and efficient implementation of housing programs, and the Commission looks forward to continuous constructive engagement with the committee so that we can work together towards ensuring that every police officer has access to decent and affordable housing that supports their critical role in safeguarding national security and public safety. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Now, maybe before we go to plenary, I'm saying time is much spent as well. IG, do you probably will wish to have the service commanders maybe reinforce your position? They're the service users. Yeah, maybe just briefly.
Very, very correct, Honorable Chair. They are the service users. they are the officers who have got the responsibility to ensure that all the police officers who are under their changes, the different services that we have, are well taken care of. So they have got a direct responsibility when it comes to matters welfare of these officers, including the houses. And I would like them to mention, just in outline, what they are going through in terms of this housing. Welcome, sir.
Maybe the DIGs prepare. I don't know among your officers who will probably be having the record to tell us exactly how much money does the National Housing Corporation, the ministry, owes to the police officers, those who have been transferred, but the amount is still retained in terms of the rent. Am I clear? I don't know among us. I don't know whether it's... those who want to have those figures, because they're here. Yeah.
Honorable Chair, we can be able to provide with these figures, and we even have the Director of Planning here, and I also have the person responsible for the human resource within the National Police Service.
IG, they should. You know, we have been planning this meeting for the last 2 months, I think so. And it is a very important issue subject here. The suffering, you know, you can imagine now that police officer, you know, getting the peanuts, the small money they get, it's being deducted, he's not living in that house. It's a big issue. So I'm sure, or I don't know how, you need to be providing so that the ministry here commits on how they are going to refund that money. So as the DIG address, I don't know how you work amongst yourself, Director? Yeah, be preparing the figures. Okay.
Chair, I think you are very right, because there doesn't seem to be a system, an effective system of ensuring those officers are not just refunded, but then even the faults, that deduction, which is, it's not fair. And the chair, maybe from the committee, it would be important that the department does affirmative action, even in the housing itself. Not just I mean, based on the explanation on the report, Chair, it's clear that we do not have a clear strategy and a timeline. When will these police officers have decent accommodation? So, Chair, given the affordable housing program is there, and it has funding, good funding for that matter, why don't we prioritize the officers' housing, police officers, and the prisons?
Oh, yeah, I think you're jumping the gun. We'll get to the plenary, and of course, I think I was just trying to let them prepare, because I know it is going to form part of the question. So we allow first the DIGs, you just support probably the position of the IG and the commission, then we'll go to the plenary. Just briefly.
Maybe the egregious lady that you can also mention the figures actually. Because
okay. We can do under 15 minutes because at least it's almost midday.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. First, I want to join the IG in appreciating the inclusion of this meeting today to discuss this very important subject. The Kenya Police Service is the biggest sector in this particular discussion, being that the KPS houses most of these police houses across the police stations. Yes, it's true what the IG has said. This is a very serious issue that touches on the welfare and the morale of the police officers. And moving forward, we have the service has submitted a proposal for the construction of 18,662 institutional houses that primarily that is within Nairobi, an additional 547 units which are currently constructed in Nairobi. This will ease the housing issues within Nairobi that has affected the output of the police, especially in the service delivery. Additionally, Chair, 480 housing units across the country are currently stalled, and the State Department of Housing has initiated the advertisement of the new construction. However,
houses stalled?
480.
480?
Yes.
Within just KPS?
Yes.
Okay.
We are proposing that, given the fact that the repairs and the state of this housing is of a serious concern, we propose that the service retains the contribution to support the maintenance of expansion of offices if this is allowed, because this is where the wearer of the shoe knows. And if that happens, then the IG...
Which deduction the IG? Is
the one
the
that goes
levy
to
or the rent?
The rent issues that
The
goes
rent.
into there.
Not the levy?
No.
Okay.
So that we can be able to, just like the old...
Yes, at times, if the landlord cannot repair the house, the tenant, at times, of course, retains some money and do the repairs. It is not strange. Yeah, if you have a responsible landlord, the tenants at times retain and do the painting and the repairs. So I think that is the direction we want to take.
Yes.
Yeah, we're having not a very good landlord.
So that's the conversation we are. I want to reiterate the fact that the house allowances that has been given by SRC under the clusters A, B, and C honestly needs to be reviewed further. If you see the constable, actually the constables and the corporals who form the critical mass of the police, the house allowance in Nairobi is 9,500. Then it's not easy to get a house within. Take an example of Muthaiga. The police officers in Muthaiga.
But while at that, do you need the SRC or the commission can do that? The commission or SRC of course can approve, but the commission can propose.
Yes,
yeah, you have a commission.
It's a joint responsibility between IG, commission, and SRC.
But you can initiate. Okay.
Yes, Chair. Then I submit that the lower cadre of the police, especially the constables, the corporals, and the sergeants, the SRC and the commission could have a conversation to address the issues of that vis-a-vis the senior officers. Otherwise, the entire housing system that is in place right now is affecting the general output of the police, especially if there is emergencies and we are unable to collect or unable to recruit police officers immediately because they live in different parts of Nairobi or other parts of the cities. We are not responding very fast because of these issues. So I ask that if it can be given the attention that it serves. I submit, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Most of the issues have been addressed, Chairman. Mine is just to emphasize that there's need, now that you've given some guidance for the NPS, the Commission, and the housing, the SRC, to ensure that we relook into the house allowances for the NCOs, especially the officers of the lower cadre, because it is an issue for them. And also, in addressing the housing cap service, now that previously adopted the leasing of the residential units, but later on it proved to be unsustainable. And to do that, we also have to look on a way of how we can have the affordable housing, maybe in the land that belongs to the NPS, and they have the institution or houses that they put together for the efficiency and effectiveness of security services that need to be done to the Kenyans. Thank you. I submit, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I want to thank the committee for really coming up with this report of trying to look into the issues of the housing matters. relating to the National Police Service. Honorable Chair, as you're aware, there's a direct correlation between the housing of our police officers and their overall work output. So I really must thank the committee for coming up with this and hoping that concrete measures will be put in place. And I fully associate myself with the presentations by the Inspector General and the two IGs. Maybe once the issue of the housing is addressed, Honorable Chair, there's also need to look at the office accommodation of the officers, because that is also a key welfare matter. I've also looked at the presentation by the State Department for Housing, Bullet 20, Honorable Chair, where it said that the State Department has assumed responsibility for managing all institutional rental houses under the National Police Service, comprising the Kenya Police Service and Administration Police Service. There's a serious omission of the Director of Criminal Investigations, and we are tenants, we are clients of the State Department for Housing. So there's need to factor in the DCI in the future projections. Thank you.
Or is the true reflection? The DCI are not covered under.
Mr. Chairman, the DCI, we take it as part of the Kenya Police Service, and they've got their own interventions that will benefit the DCI. Very specific, very targeted in terms of the housing.
So I'm seeing even they're doing some repairs in the list provided.
That's true, Honorable Chair. My only concern was this sentence, the way it has been crafted.
Yeah, it's true.
Excluding the DCI.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, thank you.
So you can correct that.
Much obliged, correct that. We'll look at them as a distinct unit.
Okay, no.
Thank you.
There's a little bit, anyway. So wait until we get to the plenary.
No, just this matter. You know, the director is asking because the way you put it here, you have already, you know, said Kenya Police Service, administration, you know, the prisons. So in fact, DCI was supposed to be a part of that. It cannot be under. Yeah, it's
they will correct. So correct your document. Yeah.
Thank you. They will correct that. And the future
so, IG, do you need the director planning or the director?
Honorable Chair, I would also wish the director of planning, because you have got a lot of information on matters housing, just to mention the 1 minute. And then
5 minutes?
Thank you, Honorable Chair and honorable members. It is true, the issue of housing is very critical in the National Police Service. And it's one area that has been neglected for a very long time. And we appreciate the program that the government has taken under the Affordable Housing Program, where they're constructing institutional housing. There is just one concern, because quite a lot has already been spoken by my seniors, what the State Department of Housing have raised. A number of areas they have said they have commenced, some have completed, but unfortunately they are not engaging us. We need to have a platform where we can all of us agree. Because the areas ourselves know, as much as all these housing units are supposed to be repaired, there is need, there are areas that are more critical. So I think it's prudent that they consult us. We prioritize some of these areas. And we've had some discussions with Mr. Kusenya and the estate manager previously. So there is need for them to consult us because the areas that we think are very critical more than others. Otherwise, we appreciate this initiative. Thank you. So
that now take us to what Balosi had asked earlier. I hope you note the criteria. You don't just work and you don't ask the service users and to decide which to repair, which to maintain. They should actually start with them. But just not, you respond to that. Director? Yeah, let them finish. Okay. Then we start from your question and go like that. Director?
Yes, Chair.
How much is it owed to you by this landlord?
This landlord, we submit to him approximately 42 million every month. But we have realized that they are also a little slower in refunding our officers. So we have started an internal mechanism in the National Police Service. For the last 6 months, We asked them to send us an officer, and then we have the officers from our accounts and our HR departments, so that when we have all the complaints brought for refund, they collate, we refund our officers before we remit their monies. But that has happened only for the last 6 months. But we have historical injustices, sir. How do we deal with them? Because that information can only come from them. Yes, I noted that is what they said, but and I noted that they also said about 3,000 people dropped in the changeover for the payroll. But we did an audit, and we were able to demonstrate that is not the case, sir. So I think unless they didn't send us an officer from the housing, sir, we did not drop. The ones that were dropped were less than 400, and we reinstated. Thank you, sir. We can only do any refund when they are the ones who have actually collected that people vacated houses and people have occupied houses. The last 6 months we have tried our best, but you see the history is, so there are people who are still being owned, but we would not directly refund if they have not collected the same with us, that is the case. So that delay from their end is what is causing these complaints.
So being one of the majority big tenant, is it possible to have a small working team, you know, between yourself and them, so that you create a seamless processes moving into the future? That is what you are proposing.
And that is what we have started doing, sir. The last 6 months. This is the 6th month, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think we are going to now go to plenary. I don't know how we can manage, starting from the housing secretary, and you should start from what Balosi Sigei had asked. And I think Kawinya, yeah, I'll give you. There is something I'd also tried to reinforce. I think I can remember. You asked, you heard what Balosi Sigei had asked.
Please,
Then maybe you can add two from my end, because at some point I may be stepping out and allow the vice to continue. Yeah, you'll do it. Somewhere I've written. Maybe, just not add from this, we have the housing levy. You say that, of course, there is the 20% earmarked for the disciplined forces, including the KDF, the prisons, and the NPS. That 20%, does it commemorate the amount contributed by the NPS? I mean, these people contribute to the housing levy. You getting me, when secretary?
Yes, Chairman, I get it very well.
And because within the 20%, if it is shared, probably the NPS may be getting even maybe 7 or 10%. Is that equal, commemorate their contribution to the levy? So maybe you can add that question, because I think the issue of the figures and the arrears had been raised by the director. Then, of course, I think the issue has been well noted that the criteria, if you do repairs, maintenance, refurbishment, I think should be consulting the service, because they know it better. The wearer of the shoe knows where the shoe pitches most. So you add that one, then we are going to allow the Balosi to paraphrase his question.
Yeah, Chair, I had asked about the issue of the criteria used to arrive at the areas we have selected, because this is very critical. But Chair, I wanted to say two things, Chair. Number one, Chair, I wanted to thank you, Chair, for this meeting. I think it's a very critical meeting, and the decision for the committee to have this meeting is very important. And I want to reiterate that the correlation between the welfare of officers and the security is so critical. So you can't separate. If you cannot give the officers the accommodation, then there is a problem. I want to ask And I think this is because of lack of consultation. I wanted to ask whether, you know, I've had one of the officers mention here that, you know, if the repairs, we know this country, we have been all over. Whether it is repairing or putting up new houses. Because all over the country, the houses of officers, police officers, APs, are in a serious state. And I think we need to seriously talk about this thing and see whether we can be able to repair. Because if I look at the areas I know in this country, most of the houses here are not even supposed to be repaired. They're supposed to be demolished and built afresh. But I want also to commend the housing Department of State Housing for their work they are doing, Chair, because they have done, this is a good initiative, and we want to thank them. And I want to repeat the issue of house allowance. I think it is very serious. When we touch on the pay slip, and an officer cannot be refunded the money which was unfairly deducted from him, it becomes an issue when we touch an issue. So I think we need to talk about how do we talk with the police service so that we reconcile. And you see, the difference between the police and the others is that these people are always mobile. When they leave this station, they go another station. How do you change? How do you deduct the house allowance and the levy? This is an issue which Chair, I wanted to mention. The last one, Chair, is on the issue of stalled projects. I think this one is also very critical. And that is where, if you had consulted the National Police Service, they could have given you areas where you can always have a leverage of maybe completing the houses which have been installed, so that it can be a bit cheap. So, Chair, I want to recommend that we have consultation. Number three, Madam Chairman. Chair, I'm finishing. I want to reiterate that the issue of taking police officers to stay outside the police station was a mistake. And we must correct this one gradually, so that the officers can be in the police station and can respond to emergencies as it was in the earlier stages. We want to repeat that the police officers should be given houses in the police stations.
Thank you. Note that. And on the issue of stall project, I think the NPS had mentioned that they have got about 480. Maybe you can also give us, among the other services, what are the stall projects? And then what is the plan? And of course, they're completing them because they are littered all over the country. So add that one to what Sigay had asked. On the issue of stall project, on addition of the 480 from NPS, what the number of the rest? So we go to Sarah Korere. Then put off your mic, Balusi. Put off.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm just referring to the report by the State Department in page 4, where they state that they had, for this financial year, the budget allocated was 14.26 billion. And Chair, here I want to think like a serious cattle keeper. You know, when you have 14.26 billion and you are awarding a project worth 340 million, and you only have 170 million for that project. No, Chair, it is where we see a lot of litigation by the contractors to the government. Either some projects get stalled, you know, others are not completed, and we end up having a lot of elephant projects, like the infamous Mitiani House, where more than 100 million of public funds have been pumped into the project, and the project is not helping anybody. So if you see a project of 170 million or 340 million with an allocation of 170 million, what happens if that project is not fully funded. So I was just thinking, Chair, if they can budget within their means, complete projects that they have money for before they move to other projects. And then the disaster is they have even awarded contracts. So the next thing, it will be mitigation, and public funds will be used to even pay the lawyers who will be defending the State Department. That is number one. Number two, Chair, I refer to the report of the National Police Service Commission. And in page 4, in the status of reforms on the police housing and housing allowance with regards to affordable housing, they say the task force further observed that the Inspector General is mandated to operationalize a Directorate of Housing responsible for monitoring, managing, and maintaining police houses across the country. Chair, when the State Department for Housing is managing the police houses, you know, it is like bringing a carpenter to deliver babies in the maternity. And Chair, why I say so is because we've always had this tug of war between the National Police Service Commission and the National Police Service. And Chair, clearly, today I want to be the devil's advocate. There is some functions that the commission can carry out as a civilian commission on behalf of the police. And one of them, in my wisdom or lack of it, is a question of housing, right? So that we don't have the, you know, the breakdown between who has been transferred, who has been cut money where it's not supposed to be, it's not being refunded. I think these are things that we really need to go back to and see what can be done about it. Thank you, Chair.
Maybe you can respond to the 4. It was me, Balosi Sigei, Sarah Korere, and Kaunya, which I think what Kaunya asked is more or less to what I had asked, the issue of correlation of what they'll contribute to the levy and the percentage allocated to them. Then at some point, I'll be stepping out to attend to something, and the Vice will take over.
Chairman, I wish to generally start with the issue of the deductions of rent and the allocation of houses within the police service, which is institutional housing, which is under the purview of the station commanders. And I want to state that rental houses for officers in the police and prison services are assigned by heads of the respective stations. Details of the occupants or a person who vacates each house are sent to our county directors of housing, who confirm the correct rent and details of the tenant at the county level. And this information is then forwarded at the headquarters in our State Department. And what we do is that with that information, we amend our inventory of houses by changing details of the occupant. And if the rent has changed, we also do the same. So information comes to us first, and thereafter we communicate that information to police or prison human resource personnel with instructions to either stop deductions or effect deductions or make recoveries for rent arrears. And I want to give you the reasons why, in many instances, there are delays in rent deductions and stoppages. We have, as I said earlier on, manual processes. Rent accounts are verified and reconciled manually for each officer, which takes a lot of time. But with the new enterprise resource planning software that we have, which has a customer relations capability, we believe that we shall automate this process and make it quite fast and live. Then we have the issue of bulk processing at headquarters. Rent instructions are handled in black at the police headquarters. Desk officers have been assigned, as was mentioned by the head of HR here, to work closely with the headquarters to analyze and interpret these instructions correctly. We also have the issue of unauthorized deductions and stoppages. Sometimes deductions are made or stopped without approval from our State Department or without our knowledge. And we've put in place joint efforts together with the various services to identify and correct such cases. We also have delayed communication from remote areas. Instructions from far-flung stations in the country take long to arrive because they come by post office. And we believe that with the use of technology and the new system that we put in place, this will be addressed to take advantage of technology and leverage on its effectiveness in terms of coverage countrywide. The issue of transfer of officers has been mentioned by Honorable Sigei. The frequent transfers cause confusion in tenancy records. You may find that an officer has been transferred, let's say, from Kilimani to Changamwe. It takes about a month or so before we receive instructions relating to that officer in terms of details of occupancy and the rent you're paying. Before you've been able to reconcile the records and instruct headquarters to amend, he's been transferred to Changamwe. And by the time I can't be catching up with him in Changamwe, he's already somewhere in Makueni. So, and you know, the turnover within the police service, as you are aware, is quite high. At each and every day or every time there is an officer either moving into a house or getting to a house. Sometimes some of those houses are empty. To reconcile that, we are talking about 33,000 houses, including the prison services. It is a mammoth task. It's really a very big challenge for us because our systems are manual. However, with the introduction of that new tool, we should be able to reduce. It may not completely eliminate because there are still elements of manual conveyance of information which cannot be fed with the system, but we hope we are going to address that. And then we have the issue of accumulated rent arrears. When officers owe rent for long periods, it becomes very difficult to stop deductions because we are supposed to recover the arrears before we make any deductions. But we believe that with the new e-citizen payment gateway, which allows for payment of those arrears through the use of M-Pesa and so on, that will be able to address that challenge of recovery of arrears. And then we have the unclear refund responsibility that has been alluded to by the head of HR, but it's now been cleared. Previously, when we got claims for refund, we could not refund the officers' money from our budget because the budget that we get for refurbishment is development budget. And yet, rent is actually a recurrent item. So though we are receiving the money, when it comes to us, it's not coming in as recurrent expenditure, it's coming in as development to be used and is dedicated for refurbishment. So we cannot use that one for refund. Others that will, as in the past has been raising a lot of audit queries. But now we have agreed with HR, they be able to do the reductions and the refunds from their end without having to involve us. So that we are concerned with just amendment or updating of our register and collection of rent and verifying that that rent has been collected and accounting for the same. So that explains the issues of the incomplete housing inventories. Some stations lack complete records of their rental houses, but joint efforts are being put in place to update and digitize these inventories through the ERP system. So basically that addresses the issue of the deductions, rent recovery, and the challenges that officers have had in the past. It has been addressed now, and we believe that shall even move from that stage to the use of technology, and that will be a problem that we hope will be addressed in that way, as has been explained. Now back to the specific questions. On number one that was asked by Honorable Sigei on the criteria for refurbishment. We collect rent across the country, and I want to be specific to the National Police Service. Rent is collected from various counties where the police are located. And what we do is that for every county that we have, we try as much as possible to allocate the refurbishment work in direct proportion with the rent that we get. That's the kind of, based on the budget that we are getting. But before we do that, we carry out an assessment of maintenance requirements in the various counties. And that is done in collaboration between our county directors of housing and the station commanders in the various stations. And not just for the police, we also do that together with other pool houses. They prepare a maintenance plan, and that maintenance plan must be moderated to fit in within the budget that has been allocated for us for that particular year. But in general, have all the requirements that are required. So we rationalize, number one, when it comes to the procurement plan, to ensure that what we are allocating per county for the police refurbishment bears a relationship with the amount of revenue we get from that county. However, there are instances where when we have emergency works that arise, for example, a broken sewer has happened at the PEU unit in Ruiru, we are not going to refurbish some house in is it called Westgate? We'll give attention to that one because that poses a risk to the health of the officers who are there. So the main instance, for example, where a roof has been blown off from some block somewhere, it's not something that can wait. We say, okay, we are not going to repaint the houses or repair the doors or the sanitary fittings. Let us give attention to this roof, because if we don't do so, the damage that will be done from the water that will seep into the buildings will even cause greater damage. So that one comes in as a priority and the emergency works. We even have instances where there are electrical faults or failures. Those are given priority, or instances where there is failure in the internal plumbing and drainage. So despite us having our procurement plan based on the budget which is available, sometimes we are forced to amend that plan and to address emerging maintenance works which are not foreseen, but which ordinarily come in the course of doing our work. And therefore that explains that distortion between sometimes what you have planned and what you actually do. And then we have the second question is on the levy of 20%, and as to whether the contribution by the National Police Service and the other discipline services, based on their contribution, whether 20% aligns with their contribution. I don't know. We have the Director of Housing here, or the Director of, is it Director of Housing? Maybe you allow me, Chair, I could allow him to explain that relationship.
Okay, let him explain.
Thank you, Chair. What I can report is that the levy and the 20% of the house units are not related. They are not correlated, because levy is a tax, and that tax, once corrected by the KRA, is given to us to construct houses for the general public or for the public, without saying that this money came from the police or it came from whichever section of the society. So basically it's a levy, and it is separate from the other money, the money that has been given now for the purposes of the units, the 20%. So the 20%, the police are supposed to provide for them, because we are constructing houses for sale to citizens, and those citizens include even the police officers. So those who are interested, we do sell to them, but they have to pay for it separately.
So in short, you don't have the purview of that 20%. It's not visible to you.
No, it's not.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The 20%, if you recall, was a directive, and we have to comply with it, and that's what you're going to do. With regard to the development approach, there was a proposal on the old estates that we have across the country for the police, which may not make a lot of sound economic sense for us to engage into repairs and maintenance, because they are so degraded, and it is our view that we bring them down and approach them by way of redevelopment of the various estates. We are doing that with the prison services. Actually, we are relocating prison services, starting with Kisii. We shall move to Murang'a and other places outside the urban areas to new areas, and doing a complete redevelopment of those facilities. We intend to have the same approach with regard to all the houses that belong to the National Police Service. So we are going to do redevelopment going forward, and there's a team dedicated for that particular exercise. Together with, we have retained members, a consultancy team, whom we refer to as members of the design studio, who assist us in the course of carrying out the assessment and the designs. Of course, in collaboration with our stakeholders who are members of the National Police Service. The refund issue, I've talked about it. I don't want to repeat it, and I think you're in agreement with that. And then on the stall projects, the 480 ones, there are a number of them that we have across the country which we have embarked on in terms of completion. But I think the question was, what is the plan that we have in place for completion of the ones which are outstanding? And I would want to ask the director who is here in charge of student housing to tell us the plan that we have in place, and then I will talk about the plan that we have for the DCI. Director.
So thank you, Chair. For the stored housing project, police housing project, I think the housing secretary in his report, he has said that there are some projects that are pending, have been awarded and are pending commencement. And out of those projects, I can report that we have some of them under the police housing. We have the GSU, State House. We also have a project in Sodu and a project in Garissa. So those are projects that will be commencing very soon. And the others, of course, are around, they will be awarded in the next few weeks, those that were stored. Thank you.
I think while on that point, even in your report, I noticed you had indicated. But I think sometimes when you are called before a committee of parliament, we need to put some seriousness into why you are here. We want timelines that in case there is a problem that it didn't start, then we will know. But for you to tell us that a project, I think look at, is it on your page 4 or page 5? That project A is going to start, it has been awarded, but not yet commenced. So for us as a committee, we really want to work on something that you can touch in terms of timeline, so that even when we go around in visiting various police stations, then we'll say, we were told this project started 2 months ago. How comes that even the contractor is not on the ground? So give us that predictability. Thank you. Continue, Secretary.
Yeah, that's well noted, Chairman, and our apologies for that. We're going to improve.
Yes, Sarah.
Still on that, Chair, you know, I'm just having a lot of difficulty understanding this. You've awarded a project which is yet to commence, 400 units. You have allocated 21 million shillings against the 700 million required. You know, Chair, and the other pending projects that are incomplete, what is the rationale of awarding a project with only 21 million and you need 700 million to complete this project, as opposed to finishing the ones that are already ongoing?
Maybe, Secretary, you can refer to that. But having worked in government, government does not pay you money up front.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Or you'll be paid in tranches based on what level has been accomplished in terms of progression. But maybe you can touch on that, but you can finish your part. We are running out of time.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. What we normally do, sometimes we get directives, and sometimes we respond to the various needs of our stakeholders. And in the course of addressing those needs, their financial implications, sometimes those financial implications by far exceed our budgetary provisions that we have. However, that does not stop us from commencing the projects. We'll commence the projects, and hopefully, when the time for the supplementary estimates come, we'll put in a request to take care of the balance of the money that is required for that financial year, because these are projects which are going to be implemented over a period of, say, 2.5 years or so. So not all the money is required at that point. It will be spread over a period of time, and it will be paid in terms of interim payment certificate across the financial year. So that's basically the approach, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, continue. I think we understand that bit.
I wish to give a report or an update on the status of the housing and other infrastructural projects for the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. And these projects are aimed at improving accommodation and learning facilities for both staff and students in the various DCI establishments across the country. We have number one, the proposed construction of housing units in Karatina, Nyeri, where you have 100 units. And this is planned for implementation in this current financial year, 2025-26. We have the proposed construction of student hostels at the National Police Leadership Academy in Ngong, I believe. We have 1,000 units, and that is also planned for implementation in the course of the current financial year. And then we have the proposed construction of housing units in South Sea. The number is 200 units, also planned to be implemented not this financial year, but the financial year 2026-27. And then we also have the proposed construction of staff housing. I don't know if it's correct, at DCI headquarters, 1,500 units. I don't know if that's correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then we have the proposed construction of hostels for DCI students, numbering 1,200, also planned for the financial year 2026-27. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I submit. If I can proceed.
Okay, Aye.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. But maybe just probably before I proceed, I would like the Housing Secretary to probably set the record straight. As mentioned, Karatina 100 housing unit for DCI. Is it for DCI or the NPS who are on deployment there? You see, that one is, there is need for clarity so that we don't worry others there. Because they are also all living in the same standard. I think it's important for him to clarify. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. Anything from National Police Service Commission based on questions which were raised by colleagues?
I think the only question that was raised is by Honorable Sarah was about the housing function at DCI, I mean at NPS, which I believe IG as a commissioner will require to present it before his colleagues at the commission so that it is determined the level of our activity on that function, so that we don't trend on operation or jurisdiction.
Honorable Aduma.
Thank
you. Also want to...
Thank you, Chair. Chair, one, I've observed that this very important meeting has been skipped by the CEO of the National Police Service, Lele, and there's even no apology for him. Maybe I will be interested in knowing where he is. Secondly, Chairman, I want to take note of what was raised. I'm not very happy with the response by the Principal Secretary. And this is an issue which was raised by the Director of Planning, Lesuyan, where he talked that there's no consultation between this department and the police when they're issuing these houses. I'm saying this because I've looked at, I've taken note that, say, for the directive of by His Excellency that 20% of the houses be given to the police. I do not know what initiative this department had taken on their own, because security is a very, very important sector in our daily operations, and I think they ought to be accorded priority. Chair, I've also noticed, and I want to give the example of Busia, whereby affordable houses are being done in some remote part of the village. So I don't think we are doing much. I've also looked at the report of the number of units being put at Kilimani Police Station, 542. I don't know whether that particular police station has got over 500 police officers in that station. So those are things which I want to know how they came to those decisions and made that decision. The other issue which has disappointed me from the department is that when they are talking of the mammoth task of addressing officers who cannot be given their refunds, and in the digital era. So it is very disappointing to hear the PS saying that their systems are still manual and that they could not act effectively. That is a bit disappointing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Aduma. Honorable Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. One thing I'll confirm is that this is a very important meeting, and we have been following for so long. I think the department has really failed Kenyans. I'll be very clear on this, because we are the ones who are doing your job. I doubt whether you have gone to parts of the country, especially the far-fled areas. We do the repair and the construction of what you are supposed to do. For example, in Mandera, the top officers, their residential, both their residential and offices, we do it through CDF, while you collect the money. If you see some of the places where our officers stay, you will be shocked. It's not inhabitable at all. So if you collect the money and you don't return it back and repair or construct, what does it mean? When we went round, I think was it last month, to Kapsapet, Molo, we were going round. It is really pathetic to see where officers stay. Where does this money go? If you collect 42 million from only the police, where do you take it? You don't return it to them. You don't repair. You don't maintain. You don't construct. That is one thing that gives us a very big problem, because we do it with monies that we were supposed to take it in other areas, other critical areas. Number two, how do you come up with these plans of constructing in areas maybe that are maybe urban areas, where in some places they cannot get where to rent? They cannot. Police officers don't get where to rent. There are no rental houses. In such a case, you are supposed to prioritize those areas. The far-fledged areas, Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, Marsabit, Tana River, those areas are forgotten at all. I don't see any in these areas you mentioned here. I don't see even one single project you have done in those areas. How do you prioritize? How do you do it? Number three, Chair, now that National Police Service have their own accounting, why don't we give this money to the National Police so that they can prioritize where there are problems, the most critical areas, instead of channeling this money to a place where maybe it is not easy to know the critical areas? I think that's something that maybe we have to, where there is a need for amendments, it has to be done. because there is an accounting officer in the National Police Service, unlike maybe before. That is one thing that is also giving us headache. The other thing that we have seen is that the issue of transfers, when police are transferred, although my colleagues have already said, they don't get their refunds. There were a lot of complaints when we went round. And I think that has to be settled. You need to, this is a modern Kenya where we work on systems. If you're working on the analog way up to now, then I doubt whether you can be able to handle this kind of activities.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sen. Maybe between the Secretary and IG, I'm the Vice Chairman of this committee, and I normally listen a lot. I wanted to know, we visit Kamkunji Police Station, and my first question is, who is the owner of the houses in that police station? Because all functions have been transferred somewhere. But there's a commander of that police station. So who is the owner of the houses? In case there is a problem, who should be contacted? Who should be raised? And I think that is a fundamental question that between the housing, the IG, and the National Police Service, we must ask ourselves. The second question, which Secretary I want to ask you, tell us a success story since the transfer of function to yourself, that there's this particular station that we have successfully conducted everything, including collection of rent, maintaining of houses, and smooth transfer from one owner to the other. Then if you share with us such a success story, then we can say this particular system is feasible. My third question is on the issue of rent collection. You know, it is very strange in the 21st century, living in Kenya, that you are unable to collect rents. You don't know how many people have paid rent, and somebody has paid more, or they're supposed to be refunded. So it becomes an issue. Technologically, I think outside the West, we are considered to be the first among many. And that is why we never expected that. On the status of housing allowance, I listened to that very carefully and what DIG Langer there said. This is very much tailored to availability of institutional housing, that the constables are living in the camp, they have a house, then they are given that small amount. The highest ranking officer lives in that camp within a government house, that's why he's given that house. If you look at compendium of what the IG has provided here, from job group M down to F, basically all of them will live in Eastlands. They will not live anywhere. And we must take that from its face value. So the reason why this government took upon itself to prioritize institutional housing is to address such imbalance. And that is why this committee will still call you so that you give us breakdown of priority areas. We have had a lot of literature here, but some of us, we really want to be very subjective to get answers to issues one by one, so that at the end of it, we will ask ourselves, is it reasonable to give this function to the State Department, or it must revert to the National Police Service? And we can only do that once we have done enough study and also developed deep understanding of what are the issues. In my own analysis, as a member of this committee, and somebody who has worked elsewhere within the discipline forces, I think we may not be doing justice to the National Police Service in terms of housing. And that is why the two institutions, the State Department and the National Police Service, together with the Commission, they must sit together so that we begin to develop a priority list. You are being very successful in the civilian side, but we must begin to deeply reflect, where can the government save money? And this is a good place. The government can save a lot of money here. The soldiers are in the camp, they pay their rent, the utilities are there, when they are needed, they are available. There's so much in terms of value for money. Finally, I want to end with two. The first one is, Secretary, in paragraph 6 on page 5, you are thinking of bringing KWS, KFS, KDF on board. In the absence of a success story from NPS, please don't go even one more mile. And then for the IG, I think the elephant in the room is the issue of predictability. If the life of a police officer is unpredictable, then the issue of renting, housing, all that will not be possible. That somebody is in Kilimani this week, then next week he is told you are in Makweni. And then only to find there is no house is there, he is told go to Changamwe. In 1 month, they have traversed the whole of Kenya. So it also becomes difficult for that person to be properly accommodated. And for that reason, from such engagement, we also learn that there are some things we must do differently. Maybe quickly respond to those, and then I will make closing remarks. Yes, Sarah?
On the issue of clustering the status of housing allowances. No, Chair, when you look at cluster A, it's Nairobi, B, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Meru, Uasin Gishu. Cluster C is others. Chair, I know you go through Nanyuki when you go to Marsabit. Nanyuki is one of the most expensive towns in the region. Actually, you will agree with me, Nanyuki is more expensive than Meru and Nyeri. So, just like somebody else said, that we need to relook into the house allowance for the police officers, and also relook into the clustering of these towns, if at all, to do some justice to the police officers.
Thank you, Sarah. Planning officer.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So maybe Secretary probably needs to make some clarification. I think there is a mix of these projects because Ngong is for National Police Leadership Academy, not DCI for record purposes. I remember, Chair, we went around with members of the State Department for Housing, particularly in Nairobi, because those are our priority areas. You find an institution like Muthaiga Police Station, DCI headquarters, GSU headquarters, SIPO headquarters in the river, GSU training school, RDU within APTC, and traffic headquarters. Those are very critical institutions. Having officers staying outside those institutions is it's not fair for service delivery, because having a training institution like GSU, just an example, instructors living outside, you know how critical it is training. So I've not heard him mentioning what they have done with these projects. So there's a mix of NPLA, South Sea, so it has to be a bit clear on the priority list. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Planning. Okay, Secretary.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I wish to clarify something that arose, and I think it's a question by a member of this committee with regard to the 20%. The 20% reservation relates to the affordable housing projects and houses which are for sale, not institutional houses. Those have been reserved and ring-fenced for purchase by members of the discipline services. So let's not confuse the two. We are what we are dealing with today and what is outside our scope. And as the director has mentioned of planning, we've had consultations and discussions before we embark on some of these projects. The DCI projects that I've just listed here did not just emerge from the blues. There was consultation that went on. But sometimes this consultation takes place behind the scenes, which perhaps members of the public or members of this Honorable House may not be aware of. But consultations are done, and we have a full list of all the projects that we have lined up and completed for the National Police Service. I'm talking about the Kenya Police Service, the DCI, the APS. I've leave out prisons for now. We have a list which you can share with the members, with us, and the director is yet to confirm that. And also to answer Mheshimiwa's question, we have covered the entire country, including Mandera and Wajir and other places. And as we do that, we also consult with the local members of parliament. We don't do that on our own, though, and also we also involve committee consultation, so there's stakeholder engagement and participation before we agree on some of these projects. Some take so long before you agree because certain aspects must be taken into account. The areas, as you mentioned, where conventional housing may not be appropriate, or housing which is multi-story, let's say 13 floors, may not be appropriate for a place like Mandera, for instance. So that requires negotiations and discussions to find out how best to approach that. So I want to just reiterate that we don't do that on our own. We consult with the local members of parliament. Aside from that, I'll address the issue of the delayed refunds. We have software which is going to address that. And I've been assured here by the director of estates that all pending requests for refunds will be processed by end of November, before the end of this month. That's from the director of estates. And then we have the issue of rent increment. I do agree that there's been a lot of unfairness in terms of the provision of housing facilities for the discipline services, not just the National Police Service, but even the Kenya Prison Service. Our challenge has been the issue of resources. As I told you, we require 11 billion shillings to be able to bring all this housing stock to a level which is acceptable. We don't have that money within our budget constraints overall, and we even made proposals in the past. Should we increase rent? We wrote to Treasury and copied our letter to the IG then that we increase the rent by 30% to get more resources to be able to sustain maintenance. However, there was very serious objection by the National Police Service. The IG himself said, our officers are already financially strained. We cannot burden them with more financial requirements. And in any case, those houses, I mean, they are so dilapidated. Why would you increase the rent? But you see, it becomes a question of a chicken and egg. We need resources to be able to refurbish, and yet when you want to do so, they say, no, you refurbish the houses first before you increase the rent. So that has been a challenge of inadequate resources to be able to address the deferred maintenance requirements over the years. I also want to point out that under the Constitution, Article 43B, we are mandated, the government is required to oversee the development of adequate housing and access to a clean environment, and that has been charged with us through the clarification by the Intergovernmental Technical Relations Committee when we are doing the unbundling of functions. So the housing function is a concurrent function between the State Department of Housing and the county governments. And even under the Affordable Housing Act, that has been clearly spelled out that we are some of the implementing agencies overseeing the affordable housing program as well as the maintenance aspect of these houses. And also in the human resource manual and policies under Section D, the responsibility of management of houses is vested in the State Department of Housing and Urban Development. However, within a session, as I did point out, like in Kamukunji, for institutional houses, the responsibility of rent deduction, rent reconciliation, and rent stoppages rests with the accounting officer of that institution. Our job is to get records or receipts of the payment which goes to account, and you account for the expenditure. But in terms of the refunds they're talking about, why would an advice from a particular police command in a particular county write to us to be able to make changes to our inventory when it could directly write to the human resource person at police headquarters to make the changes, whatever deductions, stoppages, whatever that are required, and then let us know so that we can amend our register? So that's the challenge that was there in the past. But now that I don't repeat that, that has been resolved. But that with hindsight, perhaps that's the way we should have done to alleviate the problem that the officers have been facing. Then there is the issue of priority areas. I think the director will avail, and maybe I'll give him a chance to clarify the questions that have been asked by the honorable member here. On the issue of it being a mistake to require officers to seek their own alternative means of accommodation outside their duty stations, I don't think I'm competent to comment on that. It's a policy issue which is beyond my pay grade, and I'll leave it to the policy makers to perhaps clarify, and you could maybe put in a case for that if you are in agreement. For the KDF, unfortunately, we are actually proceeding with construction of several houses for them through a public-private partnership. So it's different from the refurbishment we do for the pool housing that we have around and the institutional houses. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I want to request the Director of Housing. He has left. Okay, then we have the Director of Institutional Housing to clarify on the spread and priority areas for our housing under the Affordable Housing Program.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So, thank you, Chair. We have reported that we have a number of ongoing projects for the purposes of police housing. We have talked of the 900 that are under construction, and that will be completed very soon. And at this phase, we can say that we have already commenced the process of constructing 9,000 units. So that is where the advertisements have been made, the evaluations are ongoing, or even the project is also ongoing. Also, in our procurement plan for this financial year, we do have a plan of doing 22,000. That is 22,000 within this current financial year, 22,000 units. The process will commence. And of course, going forward, we should be doing more for the police service. And that will be institutional housing, basically for the police.
Thank you for that explanation. IG, anything from your side?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, Honorable members, first of all, I must say that this is a very, very timely meeting to discuss a very, very critical component when it comes to matters policing. And housing has actually been a real problem in policing because due to the uniqueness of our services as a national security organ, you find that most of the times we are required to be in our camps, to be in our stations. But again, there are also the policies that are in place at the same time, which must also be looked into. So our proposal and our request as a service is that as we continue to address the issues of housing, let us ensure that priority is given to the policing service by ensuring that within our institutions we have houses where the officers can actually be accommodated to ensure that we render effective service to the people of Kenya. And that is the reason why you asked a question, who is the real owner of police houses in Kamukunja and some other areas? I would say the real owner is the sub-county police commander there, the OCS there, because he is the one who knows who is occupying house A, house B, and so forth and so forth. So I think for the purposes of easing the administration, there is need to relook into the current way of managing things so that we make it easier for our part, on our part, and even when it comes to matters, maintenance of these houses, especially now that we also have an accounting officer who can be able to account for everything, I think it would be much easier if a decision is made in line with the question that you had asked earlier, Chair, who is the owner of these houses, so that it becomes easy for us, for the Director of Planning to, in terms of planning, to get to know which is the real area that we need to give priority as priority number one. Because as an Inspector General, I have visited many stations. I have visited many camps. I have been asked tough questions by police officers. What do we do with the repairs of houses that we are living in? And yet we pay house rent for them. My answer is as good as the one that you can be able to afford, Chair. It becomes really difficult. So this is something that we need to look at now that we have an accounting officer within the National Policing Service, so that we can be able to enable the service commanders address those issues actually as an upfront issue, as opposed now to, to handing over the same to some other, to the housing entity to deal with something that can be done by the service. But that does not mean that we don't recognize the Ministry of Housing as the owner of this building, but something can be done to ease that problem. Then, in terms of clustering of the houses, a question that has actually been raised by Honorable Sarah Colel. This is a very, very important question, and that is the reason why I'm saying this meeting is a very timely meeting. It is true, this clustering needs to be reviewed. The truth of the matter is that if, for example, in cluster C, somebody gets 5,500, you see, even to get a house to rent in those areas is even very difficult. So what it means, these officers must dig deep into their pockets so that they can be able to raise the required rent money. And again, that affects with the welfare, and in return, it also affects actually the way they discharge the duty that they are required to discharge. They ask us tough questions. What do you do? I went to Muthaiga police station here the other day. I was asked tough questions by officers. Why do you allow us to stay in Mathare? I said, I don't allow you, and I don't want to stay there. I want houses to be built here, and I'm happy with the Minister of Housing they have promised to build houses as a matter of priority in Muthaiga police station so that our officers can actually be given decent houses in those areas and deliver on their mandates required by our constitution. Then maybe I also need to mention about Gong. Gong, we have the National Police Leadership Academy. At the end of the day, we want this Leadership Academy to be a police university. And we are already in that process. So we also have the DCI there, being domiciled there, as part of the colleges that are accommodated within the National Police Leadership Academy. And we are grateful that the Ministry of Housing has found it very, very important to also consider doing the building there so that we can also be able to domicile the trainings that are directed towards the DCI in that leadership academy for the lower cadres, and then for the senior leadership, they can still remain in where we have the DCI academy as at now. Finally, let me mention something to do with the predictability in terms of transfers within the service. Maybe share on this one. Let me say this. National Police Service is one of the national security organs. And the issue of transfer, in most cases, is dependent on the needs of the profession of this service, the service to the people, to ensure that there is peace and security in our country. So at times, there are demands for these movements from time to time, then so affecting probably the way the Ministry of Housing is set actually to deal, or how it deals with others, other ministries who have got similar, housing within their institutions. So that is the reason why I said that we need to realize that the National Police Service, as much as it is one of the government departments, but the kind of service it renders is within the national security organ, and much is also dependent with with actually the major happenings within our country, because that is actually the consideration. So you might find that an officer has been deployed, and in 3 months' time we have moved him to some other areas because of the demands of this duty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary IG, and all of you. I want to close by giving some advisory. The first one is we need to put together a small committee from yourselves as Housing, NPS, and NPSC, so that we harmonize on common grounds, issues that are solvable. Then you develop what are the issues that must fall within the purview of NPS and what will fall within the purview of housing, so that it will only be interaction, but it doesn't cause any fighting. Then the other issue that which we want to hear is the issue of priority areas. So that even when we are coming to the budget and we are arguing on substantive issues, then we know that this is priority number 1, which is going to help the National Police Service. Then the next area that has housing, you also need to focus is on stalled projects. And the stalled projects, what surprises me is that some of them are good projects that are likely to house 200 officers, 350 officers, 100. And that can alleviate a lot of pressure from housing and also on the National Police Service. And finally, the issue of rent. And that one I can tell you from close observation. And that is why I really wanted Mr. Hinga to be here, is that because rent, as you collect it, it forms part of development. It doesn't become A in A. So that is why between yourselves and the National Police Service, you can make a kitty so that the DCI, the DIGs, the IG in the offices, they're able to do small things. Maybe there's a sewer burst. Why would they call the ministry to look for, I don't know, plumbers, to look for carpenters? When you know that you guys, you already have some money in that station or in that sub-county. So let us make work easy for all of us so that it is not an issue of pull and push all the time. Finally, it is on this issue of movement of officers. I think our issue is not about 1 or 2, 3 individuals who are moved around. That is naturally what this job requires. But I think when a group is moving, then that predictability is really important. Finally, on housing, I think what you need to share with PS Singer is the issue of looking at the police stations that have over 200 officers or 100 plus officers. Let them be within the priority list. I come from Marsabit, and I'm the MP for Marsabit Central, Saku. The oldest police station, among the oldest police stations in northern Kenya. It houses more than 180 police officers with less than 50, 60 houses. So what do you do with 100 plus? So they will scavenge for accommodation around. And it's a security-prone area that sometimes it can expose the lives of police officers unnecessarily, really. So with those, we really thank you, all of you. The Department of Housing, the IG, NPSC, the DIGs, and all the officers from government who have come before the committee this morning. We have said much, but I always am very optimistic that in Kenya, there are good people who do good things. And I think let us go out there and do good things for the benefit of our people. Thank you very much. I think you are free to go to your other duties. Thank you.